more to come there.
All right, we are joined by the Director of Athletics at SMU. They will be a part of the ACC. We know that story and where they are. Rick Hart joins, Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak. Rick, thank you so much. I don't know why you weren't on with us last week. There was nothing going on. You haven't been busy, but honestly, congratulations. We had you on when there was at least the possibility of what the Big 12 might do. When that did not happen and the Pac-12 fell apart, did you feel like perhaps your opening had been shut?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Always great to be on with you guys. No, we knew and had been, again, exploring possibility of whether or not, the ACC might expand, and if so, if we would make sense. And so, no, I didn't feel it was over at all. And, I think we just kind of pivoted, for lack of a better term, to next man on deck.
Rick, a lot has been made about the sacrifice financially you guys are making to jump in to the ACC and foregoing all that revenue for so many years. How did you come to that decision, and how do you have to sell that to the alumni about, raising those funds and making sure that the gap doesn't widen between you and the teams that are still going to get that money?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, that decision, if you will, the agreement that we ultimately formalized, had to be supported by and approved by the president and our board of trustees, which was done so unanimously. So I'm grateful for their support, and I'm grateful that they see and believe what we do, which is to say that this is an investment. We're not really sacrificing any revenue. Again, we never had it, but there's an understanding and appreciation for what you just articulated, that we've now got to go out and generate some revenue so we can be competitive in the ACC. And I'm confident that we're going to be able to do that. I've had some individuals describe to me that that's inspiring, and that's just the mentality of our alumni base. And so that's the way we'll do it for a period of years.
What was the reaction of your head football coach when he first heard the news? We talked to Rhett a couple different times, and there was always a question of like, hey, the future's uncertain. You guys are in the mix, but then this move happened, and we haven't talked to him since. But what was the reaction from your head coach there and Rhett Lashlee?
I think he said, "That's awesome. Now I gotta make sure we beat Louisiana Tech."
Yeah, right.
No, Rhett's been engaged, as have our other head coaches. He and I were in communication. It was obviously of interest to him, but he also, again, really did trust that the university leadership and I would, take that where it could go. And so he was able. He had been focused on football, and he was grateful that it wasn't a distraction. But clearly, he's incredibly excited about the opportunity in recruiting and in building and strengthening the roster that, membership of the Atlantic Coast Conference will bring starting in 2024.
What, if any, are demands from the ACC on what you must do better?
I think they expect us to be competitive, and they're clearly satisfied that we've demonstrated that, we'll be in a position to do just that, to add value. Otherwise, there aren't really any strings attached. There haven't been conversations yet, although there are some scheduled now about scheduling, and we just got a copy of their bylaws and those types of things. But as you might imagine, they did their research on the front end, and so I think they feel very good about how not just SMU as an institution and an athletics program will bring value to the ACC, but having a presence in Dallas, Texas, and being able to engage their alumni here and being able to serve as kind of a bridge to the West Coast, to Cal and Stanford, I think are all things that they're excited about.
Rick Hart, the Director of Athletics at SMU, with us on 365 Sports.
Rick, it's well documented what you guys have had to come out of over the last 30 years, 35 years, to reestablish yourself on the scene. What was that like for you and the journey to be a part of, to put SMU back on the map after years and years of still serving a punishment that had already been served over and over again for something that had long passed, that nobody had anything to do with it, but now here you are back on the scene?
Yeah, I don't think I can articulate it. I can't put into words the journey or really what it means and what it feels like to have been here and a part of a process that delivered what is universally unique to SMU and the individuals that experienced the last 35, 40 years. It's literally uncomparable. And so it's hard to articulate other than to say that it feels great. And it's very rewarding. It would have been disappointing, even though, we knew all along we didn't completely control, who expanded, when they expanded, what the criteria might be, whether or not we'd be a fit. But it would have been disappointing. It would have felt empty had my time at SMU ended without being able to check that box. And so it's an incredible feeling. And I think it'll even amplify when we actually go into the league officially in July.
I was going to say, what's the magnitude, and you might not be able to articulate this all the way as well, but what's the magnitude of how much the brand's amplified simply, Rick, by being in this league, being a part of the quote-unquote Power Five versus where you've been the last few years?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, first of all, 2 weeks with, our brand alongside Stanford and Cal is good for the brand. And then, now to affiliate, with all the other members who are in the ACC, I mean, it's already having an impact. It's already the topic of conversation, no matter where I go or who I'm with. And I think it's going to be that way for a while. And the exciting part is, and we've talked about, we don't want to limit what's possible with this. I mean, we have some ideas of what we think we can expect and what will occur and where the opportunities might manifest. But I think it'd be foolish for us to limit that, because I believe that there are going to be things on the horizon that we haven't even dreamed of, haven't even thought about yet. It's that big of a moment for us.
Rick, everything in realignment is about helping the institution who you represent. With you, it's SMU. Obviously, Cal and Stanford all of a sudden looked up and the room was empty other than Oregon State, Washington State. How much with Cal and Stanford, and I got to say, when I first heard Cal Stanford and the ACC, that was interesting. But when they said Cal Stanford and SMU, it caught my attention because we know you've been on this show, and also right here in our backyard of what we cover. Did Cal and Stanford push for you?
I'm going to frame it this way. I'm going to answer your question, but Cal and Stanford's availability, and then coupled with SMU, I believe was an incredible catalyst for this to happen for a number of reasons. And in my conversations with Stanford in particular, and not to say that Cal wasn't here, but I have more knowledge about Stanford's position. Yes, I believe that they also saw the synergies, and they also believed that SMU was an important partner in this transaction, for lack of a better term. And so the synergies around that, I think, became apparent to all parties and became very critical to this happening.
I had a former SMU player tell me that it's great because we feel like we've been in the wilderness for many, many years. Paul kind of alluded to what the program has been through, and it's taken forever and ever. Did it feel like at times the wilderness?
No, but but I know what you're saying, and I'm splitting hairs a little bit. Let me elaborate. I'm incredibly proud of SMU Athletics, what we've achieved. Again, I've been here 11 years, so I'll stick with that. Over the last 11 years, our trajectory, the accomplishments, the quality of our people, the quality of our student athletes, the competitiveness of our program, to do it where we sit in the landscape, I think makes it even that much more impressive. And it was special. We've had special moments, and we've shaped people's lives, which is what we're here to do. Now, having said that, the one thing we could never overcome with some people, from a brand perspective, from a quote perception and quality perspective, was we weren't seen as being that highest level, and that was used against us, and it was limiting at times. And so to now have that no longer in place again is going to really unleash some things that I think we couldn't achieve otherwise.
Has TCU called about a future home and home now that I guess in their eyes you're more in line as far as Power 5 schools go?
That'd be a good question for them. I did ask when I was informed that the series was going to be paused if it would matter if we were a quote Power 5 program, and I didn't get a clear response. But I have not gotten a phone call on that front. No.
Did that take you aback? Were you ready for that?
It didn't surprise me.
Rick Hart, Director of Athletics at SMU, with us on 365 Sports.
Rick, I know that you've heard it before. I mean, SMU is a sliver of a lot of different slivers in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. It's a very interesting place, much like Houston is, of just there's so many different schools around and the geography and all of that. How much do you think having this brand that you're now a part of, we talked about the magnitude and the amplifying, but how much do you think you can dig your claws further into the city of Dallas because of the backing, so to speak, that you now have with the ACC and some of the the matchups that will now be coming to the city?
Yeah, I mean, it'll help. Again, we're realistic about, look, I've been in college towns and metroplexes and anywhere in between. And there's advantages and disadvantages, to all of them in terms of when you're trying to gather support. I understand being in Dallas is challenging. There's a lot of competition, sports and entertainment. You can always pick a winner. As a smaller private school, we're not going to bring the masses in terms of our alumni base. However, there's no doubt that when you're trying to get fringe fans and maybe fans of other schools or be somebody's local school or local, mascot that you cheer for, affiliating with the ACC. Again, I'm just telling you, people like winners. They like the best, and that affiliation is going to have a lot greater reach. And having those other programs come in, we know it. I mean, we've competed against those programs in non-conference games, and when we do, people show up and people support and people get excited. But now we're going to be able to do that, A, on a scale that we haven't been able to do before, and B, we'll be a peer institution. And so it's my expectation that our venues are going to be packed. Moody's going to be the hottest ticket in town again. And as I've said, you better get your tickets now, because if you wait till next year, you may get left out.
Rick, you guys are also going to be the hub of, I think you said, the gateway to the West Coast, essentially, with Olympic sports presumably coming in and doing a lot there. Obviously, you can't host everything on your campus, but for that, like, how's that even gonna work? This is really new territory you guys are blazing for college athletics.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about the logistics of it, but I think conceptually, I can see very clearly, that it's a concept that has merit. I think it's the way, as I said earlier, we need to be thinking. We've got to continue to think about how to do new and creative things to help mitigate travel, mitigate missed classes, better support and enhance the support for our student athletes, particularly as these conferences become literally national conferences. And we're delighted at the idea that we could be a hub for that. You know, we've got championship caliber facilities. We've got the infrastructure with 2 airports and hotels. And, you know, I mean, people love to come to Dallas, the ease of travel. So I think that's a way we can really differentiate ourselves and create, you know, some real value for SMU.
In the end, with how this is structured for SMU and the ACC, we know about the revenue and or lack of it, whatever. But you were making money in the AAC. Is the extra revenue you get from the ACC more than that, along with whatever others contribute to you that are alums and donors?
It's all plus side. I mean, again, we're not taking a step back. I've
Right.
said this from a revenue perspective. And now the opportunities to generate significant revenues across all revenue streams, again, just can't be matched when you're not in the club, right? And without ACC membership. And so while it's going to require a lot of work and it's not going to happen overnight, I'm not ignorant to that. And I don't take for granted that the generosity of our alumni and the community. Having said all that, it's inspiring. We're going to have a lot of fun. I expect a great response, and I expect that we'll be able to, again, it's all upside. I mean, the opportunities we're going to have to generate revenue, to showcase Dallas, to broaden our support base are just exponentially greater in the Atlantic Coast Conference. And I think that's what our board and the president obviously saw and believed when they approved the move.
Rick, a couple more questions. We appreciate your time. We always love to have you on the show. And you mentioned, kind of alluded to this, a seat at the table, correct, for whatever is next in college football athletics to be a part of a Power Five? Is that to make sure you have and you know there's a seat at the table?
Yes. I mean, and again, that doesn't mean anything's guaranteed. That's
Right.
not how life works. We get it. But let's be honest. First of all, we need the opportunity to fully leverage everything we can to maximize our opportunities. And you can't do that when you're not in the Atlantic Coast Conference. All right. And that's not, I talked about how proud I am and what we did in the American. I mean, and I'm sincere about that. But at the same time, you just can't maximize it. So now we have some time to do that. And I think to solidify that seat at the table long term, you know, as things over the course of time, I don't know if that's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, continue to evolve. We want to make sure that SMU is positioned to be at that table long term.
So we'll close it out with this. So much going on. And, there's a little football game this weekend. I mean, how excited are you for the big opportunity at Oklahoma? And I guess it just must feel like, even though that game's in Norman, but with what we're talking about and with what the program's got going on, big opportunity this weekend, just more momentum, I guess, for the SMU brand and potentially a lot more this weekend.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. And it's just that, we expect that if we play well, that we can compete. But we know it's hard to leave Norman with a dub. But that's the mentality we'll go on there with. And if that happens, as you said, it's just going to be an accelerant. It's going to be a multiplier on what our community is feeling right now. But it's not a barometer in terms of, the success of the season either. And so I think that's a great position to be in as a team. That you can go in, hopefully you can play loose. You belong, but at the same time, you don't have to play under the pressure that, you've got to leave there with a win. And so we'll see what happens, but I believe in our team. I believe in our coaches. And as you said, it's just a terrific opportunity for us to go in and see if we can make something special happen.
Rick, I know you're busy, and I know last week was crazy. And it never stops for directors of athletics anymore with the way college football is. Congratulations. We appreciate it. We appreciate you being on the show when you can. And thank you very much for the insight and the time.
Yeah, appreciate y'all. I'm happy to return anytime. And pony up.
Thank you. Rick Hart, SMU Director of Athletics. And that was interesting when the Pac